There was once a man who walked through the dusty streets of a forgotten village, where silence had a way of haunting the soul. The air smelled of earth and sorrow, the kind that comes from too many years of cruelty disguised as survival. The sun had burned the land into submission, and even the trees seemed to bend under its tyranny. Yet somewhere in that lifeless silence, a faint cry echoed, the whimper of a starving dog chained to a crumbling wall. Steve's voice, deep and deliberate, fills the darkness like a confession. You can tell a lot about a man, he says, by how he treats those who can't fight back. The dog's eyes were glazed with pain, its ribs visible beneath a thin, dust-covered skin. No one had fed it for days. People passed by, men going to work, women carrying water. Yet not one of them stopped. They all pretended not to see. But a boy did. He couldn't have been older than 10. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, and his eyes. They carried something that the world had long forgotten. Mercy. He walked up to that dying animal with a small bowl of water he had saved from his own share. His hands trembled as he placed it near the dog's mouth. The creature looked up, unsure, afraid, and yet hopeful. The boy whispered softly, "Eat, my friend, you're not alone." But Steve pauses, his tone low. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once told a story like this. A man saw a thirsty dog panting near a well. The man climbed down, filled his shoe with water, and gave it to the dog to drink. And for that one act of kindness, God forgave all his sins. The sound of wind carries the story forward, rustling through the dry palms, echoing through the ruins of the village. The boy became the whisper that traveled far beyond his small world. He didn't know who the prophet was. He didn't know about the reward or the mercy of God written in invisible ink across the heavens, but his heart already knew. Days later, the dog followed him home. The two became inseparable, one broken, one kind. The villagers began to notice. Some mocked him, calling him foolish for feeding a stray when people themselves were hungry. But kindness, true kindness, is rarely understood by the cruel. Then came the storm. The sky turned gray, the kind of gray that makes your chest tighten. Rain fell hard, flooding the narrow streets. Houses of clay crumbled, roofs caved in, and in that chaos, the boy went missing. For hours, his mother screamed his name through the thunder. When the storm finally calmed, they found him near the river, unconscious, his tiny hand still clutching the collar of the same dog he once saved. He had tried to rescue it from the rising water. The villagers carried him home, tears cutting lines through the mud on their faces. The dog, trembling, lay beside him, refusing to leave his side. For days, it didn't eat, didn't move, until one morning, both the boy and the dog were gone. Steve's voice lowers, barely above a whisper. That's mercy. That's what Islam teaches. That compassion isn't measured by who deserves it, but by who needs it. He pauses, letting the silence breathe, heavy with emotion. The prophet said, whoever shows mercy, even to an animal, God will show mercy to him. And whoever is cruel will find cruelty in return. The camera pans across the old village now, years later. Where the boy's house once stood, there's a tree. Beneath it, the villagers buried him and his loyal companion together. Children come there to play, and travelers stop to rest. Someone carved words into the bark, faded but still visible. Mercy is never wasted. Steve's tone grows solemn again. In a world that teaches us to step on the weak, Islam whispers something different. That kindness to animals, to all living things, is a path to heaven itself. Because when you feed a creature that cannot thank you, you're feeding your own soul. The camera fades to black, but his words linger, the kind that echo long after the story ends. Sometimes, he says softly, God hides the doorway to paradise in the eyes of the helpless. The rain had long stopped, but the land never forgot. The villagers said that ever since that storm, the air carried something unseen. Something that felt like memory or guilt. The tree that grew over the boy's grave had thickened with time, its branches curling like the arms of an old man praying. Its roots dug deep into the earth, as if trying to reach the hearts buried beneath. The wind made the branches sway, and sometimes when it passed through, people swore they could hear two souls whispering, the boy's soft laughter and the faint bark of a loyal friend. Years turned to decades. The boy's story became a tale told by elders at dusk, when children gathered around fires with wide eyes. They said he had been chosen, a small hand of mercy sent to remind them what humanity meant. But stories, no matter how sacred, eventually turn into myths. and myths into background noise. The world moved on. The new generation stopped believing. The tree became nothing more than a mark of the past, and kindness became a luxury no one could afford. Steve's voice returns, heavier now, like it carries the weight of the years. Time erases what we don't protect, and when mercy fades, darkness takes its place. There came a drought. The river dried. The animals that roamed freely began to vanish. People fought over water, over scraps, over what little hope remained. In the middle of that chaos lived an old man named Idris, the only one who still tended to the tree. Every morning, he'd bring a small jug of water, pouring it at the roots, whispering prayers no one else remembered. He had been a child when the boy died. He'd seen him feed the dog. He'd seen the storm. And even now, his hands trembled when he touched the bark, as if greeting an old friend. But Idris was tired. His back was bent, his eyes dim, and his heart, it beat like a drum that had lost its rhythm. One night, as the desert winds howled through the village, Idris woke to a sound, faint scratching like claws against wood. He stepped outside, the moon cold and blue above him. There, at the base of the tree, something moved. A stray dog, thin as bone, staring at him with familiar eyes. Its coat was patchy, its body trembling. And yet, when it looked at him, Idris froze. Those eyes, they were the same shade as the boy's. Steve's tone grows quieter. There are things the mind explains, and then there are things the soul simply knows. The dog didn't run when Idris approached. It just stood there silent, waiting. He poured what little water he had into a bowl and set it down. The dog drank slowly, never breaking eye contact. When it finished, it turned toward the tree, lay down beside it, and closed its eyes. Idris whispered into the night, "You came back, didn't you?" The villagers mocked him the next morning. They said he'd gone mad. "The old fool thinks the boy's spirit came back as a dog." They laughed. But Idris didn't argue. He just smiled, that broken kind of smile that hides both pain and truth. He began feeding the dog daily, calling it Rahma, mercy. And every night it slept by the tree, never leaving its side. Then something strange began to happen. The ground around the tree started to bloom. Tiny green shoots pierced through the dry soil, flowers. Real living flowers. The first the village had seen in years. The people gathered, touching the petals like they were witnessing a miracle. The well nearby, which had been dry for months, began to fill again. Slow at first, then faster. No one could explain it, but Idris knew. He knelt by the tree and wept. "He's still here," he whispered. Word spread beyond the village. Pilgrims began to visit, bringing offerings, lighting lanterns at night. They called the place the Tree of Mercy. But with fame came greed. Leaders saw opportunity. They built fences, set up stalls, charged visitors to see what they claimed was a holy site. The poor were pushed aside. The sacred turned into spectacle. Steve's voice sharpens, carrying disappointment. That's what happens when men touch miracles. They drain them until there's nothing left but profit. The flowers began to wither again. The water grew foul, and one morning Rahma was gone. Idris searched for days, his voice echoing through the barren fields. He found tracks near the edge of the village, and blood. Not much, just enough to stain the dust. His heart sank. He followed them to a group of hunters laughing near a fire. One of them held a fur pelt stretched and drying in the sun. Idris fell to his knees. "Why?" he whispered. They shrugged. He was just a stray. Steve's tone lowers, deep with pain. You can kill a body, but you can't bury what it stood for. And cruelty always circles back. But that night, a storm unlike any before rose from the horizon. The wind screamed like something alive. Lightning split the sky, striking the tree again and again. The villagers ran for shelter, their voices drowned by thunder. Idris, frail and shaking, dragged himself through the storm toward the shrine. He reached the tree just as the lightning struck once more, setting its branches ablaze. He cried out, clutching the trunk. "Forgive them," he shouted. "They don't understand." The fire roared, but the rain followed. The storm crushed the flames, leaving behind steam and silence. Idris fell beside the roots, his hand resting on the blackened bark. When dawn came, the villagers found him there, motionless, a faint smile on his lips, and beside him lay Rahma, whole, alive, but neither of them were breathing. The two were buried together, just like the boy and his dog had been. And once again, life began to grow from the soil above them. This time stronger, greener, unstoppable. The roots of the old tree intertwined with new ones, sprouting saplings across the barren fields. Birds returned. The river flowed again. Steve's voice turned softer, reverent. Mercy has a way of resurrecting itself, even when buried under the weight of human cruelty. You can burn the tree, but you can't kill the seed. Years passed and people began to speak of Idris as a saint. His story, like the boy's, became legend. Travelers said that if you walked beneath the tree at dusk, you could hear the sound of 2 footsteps and the faint bark of a dog, guiding lost souls home. But not everyone who came sought peace. Some came for power. One man, Malik, a wealthy trader with eyes like polished stone, bought the land surrounding the tree. He claimed it was his family's heritage, that he would protect the site. But protection soon turned into control. He built walls, collected money, and turned the place of mercy into a business. He told people their prayers would be heard only if they paid. The poor who couldn't afford it were cast out. Steve's voice darkens. The devil never destroys with fire. He destroys with temptation. One night, Malik dreamt of a boy standing at the foot of his bed, drenched in rain, eyes glowing faintly. Behind him stood a dog, silent and still. The boy spoke softly, "You built walls around mercy, but mercy was never meant to be owned." Malik woke in terror, drenched in sweat. He dismissed it as a nightmare. But every night after, the same dream returned. The same boy, the same eyes, the same warning. His wealth began to rot. Crops failed, his livestock died, his men fell sick. Still, he refused to change, until one night lightning struck again, right above his mansion. It set his roof aflame, spreading fast. He ran outside screaming for help, but no one came. The villagers had long turned their backs on him. The fire consumed everything, his home, his money, his pride. When it was over, Malik crawled through the ashes, burned and trembling. He looked up and saw the tree standing tall in the distance, untouched by flame. He dragged himself toward it, whispering prayers through cracked lips. When he reached its roots, he saw something carved into the trunk, new words glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Mercy is not for sale." Steve's voice slows, almost breaking. He fell to his knees and wept. For the first time, not out of fear, but out of understanding. The next morning, the villagers found Malik kneeling by the tree. His body was still, his face calm. In his hand was a piece of paper, his last act, a deed transferring all the land back to the people. They buried him beneath the roots beside Idris and Rahma. The soil had become a cradle for redemption, and so the cycle continued. Kindness born, forgotten, rediscovered. The village thrived once more. But those who walked the path toward the tree would often stop halfway, feeling a strange warmth in the air, like invisible hands guiding them. Some claimed they saw shadows, a boy, an old man, a dog. Others said they heard a voice whisper through the leaves. Mercy never dies. Steve pauses and the silence stretches. Then he says, "Every act of compassion, no matter how small, ripples through time." The boy's bowl of water became a river that never stopped flowing. That's how God works. Through echoes, through souls that remember when the world forgets. The camera pulls back slowly from the tree, from the graves, from the reborn fields, until the land becomes a blur of green and gold beneath the sky. The wind moves softly, carrying one last sound, the bark of a dog, fading into the horizon. And somewhere in that endless stillness, you realize the story was never about the boy or Idris or Malik. It was about you, about what you choose to do when faced with something helpless, about whether you walk away or kneel down and give water to the thirsty. Steve's final words linger like a prayer. The prophet said, "Show mercy to those on earth, and the one above the heavens will show mercy to you." That's not a story. That's a command. Because mercy, real mercy, outlives us all.